Hello everybody, welcome back. Michigan Outdoorsman here. My name is Jeremiahvalpatic. Today I wanted to show you guys the Burris XTR Signature rings. These here are new to me. They've actually been out for a little while. I don't see a whole lot of people talking about them. So I figured I'd give them a shot because I've seen another YouTuber that I respect use them. So today we're going to go into how to set them up and what their benefits are. So stay tuned. So currently, you guys know I've been using the FX No Limit rings here on this rifle. If you've been following along in this channel, when I got this rifle, I put those rings on here. Really like them, very high quality. You can tell by the stainless screws, stuff like that. They really take care of their stuff. Fit and finish is superb. So there's no complaint. There's nothing wrong with these rings whatsoever. But if you look at the rifle here, the scope sits up pretty high. My cheek riser's got to be maxed all the way out, and even then it's still not quite enough. And they don't really offer a height for the rings. Well, these XTR rings can kind of do what the No Limits can for getting you a cant on your rifle scope without using your base. So you can potentially shoot up to 40 minutes of angles just with the shim inserts on these rings. So you guys can see that little nylon plastic ring in there. That's what I'm talking about. Those rings here, those inside inserts are shims, and this is how they come packaged. These here can take you anywhere from, I think, 5 minutes of angle to 40 when you stack them correctly. Everything's labeled really well, packaged extremely well. I'm like, this is actually a sealed case. You got a rubber gasket going around it. This is kind of insane. So, very costly rings, probably the most expensive. I think these No Limits might have been actually, now that I think about it, maybe the same price. I paid about $140 for these online. You can find them for much more if you want to pay more, but this is about what I found them for, and I think these No Limit rings are about $140 as well. But we're going to swap out to these. These here have a much smaller height, so I should be able to get my scope lower to the bore, and that's all I want. So, and plus I'd like to be able to use my full travel, which the full travel of the scope, which the No Limit rings can definitely do that. But I already have a 30-minute of angle base on this rifle, and with my No Limits, I got them adjusted just ever so slightly to bring that scope down a little bit further so I can take full advantage of these like 120 minutes of angle I got of adjustment in this scope here. So that being said, scope can lift. We're pivoting, in case you guys have never seen these. Really cool design, but these, you got all this adjustment here, and this doesn't look like much, but that's probably easily 30-40 minutes of angle, okay, maybe even more. So that's all it does. I basically had the scope just jacked up a little bit in the rear to get me more range. But like I said, these rings are so tall, so that's why we're getting rid of them. And not necessarily getting rid of them, but just moving them to a different rifle. All right, so I've got the rings right where I want them. And just to save some time, I cut that out of the video. These rings come very clearly labeled. You probably can't read that very well, but they'll say plus 10, negative 10, you know, plus 20, negative 20, stuff like that. So you know top and bottom, plus or minus. You have to stack the rings in accordance. So I have plus 20 because I had over 20 minutes of elevation left in my scope before maxing it out. And these things hold really, really well, these plastic inserts. So I added 20 here. I'm going to do 0 here. And I was a little worried about the scope getting bound. We'll have to find out together. It shouldn't, because nobody else has really complained about it yet. And then I put my 0. My zeros are right here. But I've got a plus 20 on the bottom to lift and a negative 20 on the top. So it still says 34 millimeters. And you can tell by looking at them, there's a big difference. We're going to put these rings on. We're not going to level. We're just going to fire around. I'm just going to snug them. We're going to fire around and see where I impact. And then based off of that, whether I can still go higher or take more out of the shim inserts. Now, Burris had said in the instruction manual that you can see some left and right play. And what that is these are true centering rings. That's a little high. I better put this down to 20. Let's go to 18. So they're not quite at 18 inch-pounds, but they're snug. And what these are, so these here are self-centering rings, so you can see a little bit of left and right. What they are is they're both split here. Usually you have a fixed side. Well, that screw there on the left pulls both those clamps together, whereas traditional rings have a fixed one side and then a clamp on the other that moves. So these are just truly self-center, so if there's any defects in the center of your rail, these should eliminate that. So they're going to be a little more of a pain in the butt to set up, because they said if you start to shoot left or right, if it's more than 3 minutes of angle, you want to loosen these up and turn that like this, because if you don't have those perfectly left and right, you'll be pushing your scope, plus or minus a few degrees this way as well. So very important to take your time, set these up, I think. But we're going to go fire around and see how close they are. I can't run the Tacticam with this on because it hits here. These are some really chunky rings. So I'm going to have to play around. I can obviously readjust. I can move my Tacticam like this, but then it gets in the way of my zoom, which I guess I don't need right now. So I'll run it for now and see what you guys think. All right, so let's backtrack a little bit. You want to set these up like you do on almost any other set of rings. You get them on your pick rail, push them forward, seat them in the forward position, tighten them up. Now I'm going to use 60 inch-pounds for my rings. That's what I usually do on all my bases, providing the screws are big enough to handle it, and these are. So we're going to torque these down to 60 inch-pounds. Now I'm going to torque this rear one because I know for sure this where the rear one's going to go. The front, I might have to move front or back just a little bit, just because I have a data card holder that has to be hooked onto this, and I don't want it just anywhere. I got to have it out of my way. So let's put it here for right now and see what that hits. I don't really have enough room to put it on the front. This is where I want a spur mount or something. All right, sorry. Terrible cameraman. So we set them in there like that. The data card can close. It can open. It's a little bit in the way of my It's a little in the way, but I don't know if it really is. This arm needs to be longer on this MKM machining one. If it was 3/4 of an inch longer, I could swing out of the way of this. And I don't want to move my scope because right now my eye relief is set perfect already because I've already had this mounted and tried it. Right there, everything's easy to get to. I got to reach over it really weird to get my parallax, but usually that's set for the match, so that shouldn't be a big deal. Okay, so scope positioning is all right along with this MKM data card holder, so we're going to leave it. So I'm going to add this in there. That might get in the way for clearing jams, hopefully not. Like I said, push these forward and snug them down. So now we got 60 inch-pounds. We're going to drop the scope into these rings. Actually, before we do that, I need to level my rifle. Pick rails level. Throw my wheeler level on the front. Okay, both bubbles match. So like I've stated earlier, I've got the plus 10 in the bottom. And then I've got the zeros in the front. Now these are snug, and these rings are kind of beefy. I will say that they're chunky rings. They stick out their ways. They're big rings. These are nothing small. They're built very well. Scope does not rock with them on there at all. And these shim inserts can twist and turn, and what that does, not on the zeros obviously, but on like the other minute of angle, there it is, like in the rear, that can push your scope this way, because if you have plus 10, and it's supposed to be sitting perfectly centered, and you have it like this, well, you got like 5 or 3 minutes of angle pushing to the right of your scope or to the left of your scope, depending on how you have it turned. So you want to be mindful of that. Now the zeros don't matter, so I'm not going to worry about too much about those. And I try to keep my rings the match set, even though it probably don't matter on these because of the plastic inserts, but I try to keep fronts and rears together and oriented the same direction no matter what I'm doing. So we're going to snug this down. And I've got way too much on the torque wrench. I always catch myself doing this. We're going to go to 15 inch-pounds. We're just going to torque the center screw down. See, that's already too tight. Okay, I'll go to 15. Okay, so before we do any of that, we need to make sure the rifle's level. The reticle's level. So right now my level on the rifle is saying that it's level. Deploy my bipod, look through the scope. And my scope is all crooked, so we're going to turn this scope ever so slightly. Okay, so we have confirmed the scope is the reticle is level. Torque down these middle two. I'm going to go fire around downrange. And I'm going to take off this because this is going to distort my barrel harmonics. Lower this guy. Okay, a dead bullseye. So these rings actually can repeat. That's pretty awesome. I took the scope completely out, put them right back in, and I'm exactly right where I was. So now all that's left to do is to snug everything up to the same torque spec, and I'm going to leave mine dangerous with 3 minutes of elevation left in the scope to save my butt. Now, one thing we want to do with the scope after doing this, because we have a scope, the rail already puts the scope like on a plane like this, because I got a 30-minute angle diving board, so to speak. Well, now I took the reticle, or the shims, and made that scope go like this. The rear end kicks up, but the front stays the same, so it's actually could bind the scope potentially. So you want to take your parallax, turn it full range, make sure you have no binding. And I'd take your windage, I'd turn that out and see what you get. Now I just screwed myself, I think I'm right there. Take this, go up a little bit, go full range. Right there. You don't want to feel anything. See, now what's cool about this is now I basically eliminated myself from needing a zero stop. And I will say I do have some binding on my windage for going left, going in, left. It only allows me to turn to 10 minutes of angle when I'm at my zero, and it won't let me come down to 19. So I do have some binding, but I don't think that's because of the scope rings. What it is because I'm so low on the scope adjustments that the reticle is getting pulled like this at that angle, and it just physically can't. So with how things are now, I got 3 minutes, 3.5, really 4. I can go down 4 if I want and still be fine. I'm going to leave that. That's actually enough for me. So you want to do that because, like I said, if you come up here and you turn this knob and you go all the way up to here and also you bottom out, something's wrong, because I know I have 120 minutes of elevation in this scope roughly. So I can do all my stuff. I don't ever hold for wind, or I don't ever dial for wind. At least I try not to anymore. I'm working on holding, so I'm not too worried about dialing anymore. But I do have 10 full minutes of angle left. And what it is I'm so low. When I bring this up to, let's say, 15 minutes of angle, I can go in full range. So it's all about where I'm at in the scope. That's how I know it's not a bind on the actual rings, because if so, I wouldn't be able to do it. But these rings here I'm pretty excited about, mostly because to me they're going to be more solid than the no limit rings. So look how high these rings are compared to the Burris. I mean, that's where I was sitting. So if you guys are looking to shoot further without buying a different scope that's got more minute of angle or travel, let's put it that way, more travel in it, then I would really recommend the Burris XTR rings. So far, obviously don't have a whole lot of time on them. Obviously we have the FX no limit rings as well. Those rings are really well built, and I've had no issues with them either, except for the height. That's the biggest thing. So these XTR rings are made in the USA. They're high quality. They look like they're very beefy. I've already taken my rifle and I've already picked it up and kind of abused it on the bench, slamming it, dropping it a few times, and then shooting groups at 50 yards, and I have not had a single impact shift, so they seem to hold zero relatively well for what they're doing. I'll probably go slap it around on some barricades next and see how well they do to that. But they're low profile. I like that. You obviously have some different heights you can get. But for the money, I do think they're a better option than the FX, only for the fact that the FX have that spot in the middle where they can slide up and down. Per se, you were to drop your rifle really hard, they probably could lose zero. I never did try beating them up, but I did slap my rifle around on the bench doing some positional moving, and the jars and vibrations of that was not enough to make anything move on those no limit rings, but it is always a possibility, so you need to be aware of that. I'm not sponsored by Burris or anything like that, but when I've seen these are a game changer. They really are. So I definitely recommend them if you're looking to get more travel out of your scope. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I have more content coming, obviously. If you guys like what you see, please consider liking my videos, subscribing, leaving a comment, whatever. Tell me what you guys think of these, if you ever heard of them or seen them, because I was not made aware of them until just recently here. And they are a pretty cool design. So with that being said, thank you guys. We'll see you guys in the next one.